San Antonio, Texas, October 2024. The morning broke gray over the west side, the kind of gray that felt heavier than clouds, as if the sky itself didn't have the strength to shine. Michael Reyes stood outside his tiny three-generation barbershop, Reyes Barbershop, keys trembling in his hand. Not from the cold, from the crushing weight of a year that had taken everything from him, piece by piece, like waves dragging away the shoreline of his life. He unlocked the metal gate, pushed the glass door open, and inhaled the familiar mix of old aftershave, worn leather, and memories that used to make him smile. Now, they only reminded him of everything he'd lost. 4 months of unpaid rent, $8,000 he didn't have, and a landlord who had given him a final sentence. Saturday. That's your last day, Michael. Pay in full, or I change the locks. But the debts weren't what hurt the most. A year earlier, his wife Laura had walked out with their kids, Chris, 17, and Emily, 15, leaving only a handwritten note on the kitchen counter. The kids deserve better. Don't look for us. Michael looked around the empty shop, swallowed hard, and whispered into the stale air, God, if you're real, I need help today, because I've got nothing left. He didn't know it yet, but before this weekend ended, a homeless stranger would sit in his chair and nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. For 32 years, Michael Reyes had done the same sacred ritual every morning: flip the sign, sweep the floor, warm up the clippers, and breathe life into a place his father once called a sanctuary for the working man. His father, Rafael Reyes, an old-school Mexican-American barber with hands like stone and a heart like warm bread, had opened this shop in 1972. Michael grew up here, sweeping hair before he could spell his name, learning fades before he learned algebra, mastering straight razor shaves before his voice even settled. This wasn't just a shop, it was his inheritance, his identity, his last piece of home. But America had changed. Cheap franchise barbershops offered $12 cuts that no family-run shop could compete with. Trendy men's grooming lounges promised playlists, whiskey, and influencers. People didn't want to sit and talk anymore. They wanted speed, efficiency, transactions. And Michael, he was a man of conversation, of ritual, of slow craftsmanship from another era. Then came the year that broke him. The economy tightened. Clients stopped coming. Bills stacked like bricks on his chest, and worst of all, Laura left. The marriage hadn't been perfect, but Michael had never imagined she'd take the kids, block his number, and move into a house he couldn't dream of affording with a man who did climb corporate ladders and did give her the stability she always said she wanted. Michael lost his family in the same month he lost his financial footing. The silence afterward was louder than any argument they had ever had. He tried calling Chris and Emily every day for 3 months. Voicemails. No replies. Not even a read receipt. He tried finding them at their old school, but Laura had transferred them somewhere private, somewhere expensive, somewhere he didn't belong. Standing inside his empty shop now, Michael ran a hand over one of the cracked red barber chairs his father once polished every night. A tear slipped down before he could stop it. He whispered to himself, Dad, I'm trying, but I don't think I can hold on much longer. And somewhere deep inside him, a quiet truth echoed. Today might be the day everything ends. Or the day everything begins. The neon open sign flickered unevenly as Michael flipped it on, casting a tired red glow across the shop's interior. Reyes Barbershop looked exactly the way it had when his father ran it, which was both its charm and its curse. The 3 old barber chairs, upholstered in faded red vinyl, cracked at the edges, were relics from the 70s. Heavy, sturdy, built for men who sat down after long work shifts and needed a place to breathe. The chrome footrests had dulled over the years, reflecting a life that wasn't shining the way it used to. On the far wall hung the giant mirror with a once golden frame, now chipped, scratched, and peeling, a silent testament to decades of stories, confessions, and haircuts that came with tears or laughter. Beside it, Shelves sagged under the weight of pomades, aftershaves, and shaving brushes that barely sold anymore. In the corner sat the old jukebox his father adored. It hadn't worked in 5 years, but Michael refused to throw it out. When he was a boy, Raphael would drop a coin in every morning and let Frank Sinatra or Vicente Fernandez fill the shop with warmth. Now it stood silent, like a shrine to better years. The world outside had shifted into fast forward, but this shop remained stuck in a sepia-toned photograph. And clients noticed. People didn't linger anymore. They wanted convenience, Wi-Fi, sleek LED mirrors, and trendy names like Blade and Bourbon Barbershop or Fade Nation. Not a place where the leather smelled of decades and the air whispered stories. At 9:30 a.m., Michael sat alone on the spinning stool, elbows on his knees, staring at the empty street beyond the window. Cars passed, people hurried by, but hardly anyone stopped. He checked his phone. No messages. Not from clients. Not from his kids. Not from anyone. He swallowed the loneliness like a bitter pill. Around noon, he finally got a walk-in, an older man wanting a simple .m. 40 minutes of conversation, $20, and a $5 tip that felt like a lifeline. But when the door closed behind the customer, silence rushed back in. Michael ran his fingers through his graying hair and sighed. God, how much longer do you expect me to do this alone? But heaven remained quiet. Only the hum of the broken AC unit answered, Time moved slowly. The day stretched endlessly. And somewhere on the edge of the city, God was sending someone toward Michael, someone he would never expect. By late afternoon, the Texas sun hung low and heavy, casting long shadows across the quiet street outside the shop. Michael had made barely enough to cover groceries for a week. He counted the bills slowly, painfully, $112, all of it already spoken for by hunger, gas, and overdue utilities. At 5:40 p.m., he glanced at the clock on the wall. 20 minutes until closing. 20 hours until eviction. He rubbed his aching lower back, swept the already clean floor for the 3rd time that day, and muttered, All right. Let's call it. He reached for the closed sign hanging on the door when the shop's bell gave a sharp, unexpected ding. Michael turned and froze. A man stood in the doorway, if man was even the right word. He looked like the kind of soul life had chewed up and spit out. His hair was long, tangled, matted into ropes. His beard was wild and uneven, clinging to his chin like a memory of who he used to be. His clothes were layered and filthy, the kind of grime that doesn't happen from a week on the street, but from months. His shoes, if they could even be called shoes, were split open, duct-taped, water-stained. The smell hit Michael before the man spoke. A mix of sweat, rain, asphalt, and something heartbreakingly human. Desperation. 2 well-dressed young men waiting on the bench instantly stood up. One wrinkled his nose. The other whispered loudly, Let's go somewhere else, man. They grabbed their briefcases and bolted as if the homeless man carried a contagion. The bell chimed again as they left. The shop went silent. The stranger remained by the door, head slightly bowed, eyes hidden behind messy strands of hair. But when he finally lifted his face, Michael's breath caught. His eyes were brown, but not normal brown. They were deep, steady, ancient, as if they held galaxies of suffering and compassion behind them. Then, in a tired but oddly gentle voice, he asked, Brother, would you cut my hair? Michael's heart dropped. His first instinct? Say no. He couldn't afford another free service. He couldn't afford the time, the cleanup, the lost clients. But something in those eyes, something familiar, something quietly sacred, would not let him look away. The test had arrived, and Michael didn't even know he was being tested. Michael swallowed hard. His mind raced with calculations he didn't have the energy to finish. He'd just lost 2 paying customers. He had less than 24 hours before the landlord changed the locks. He had barely enough cash in the drawer to buy groceries for the next few days. The math didn't lie. He couldn't afford this man. The stranger stepped forward slightly, hands clasped together in front of him, a gesture that looked more like prayer than pleading. His voice cracked as he spoke again. "Sir, I have a job interview tomorrow morning. It's the first chance I've had in months. I know I look rough, I know I smell, but if I walk in like this, they won't even look at me." Michael opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The man continued, desperation slipping through every syllable. "I don't have money tonight, but if I get the job tomorrow, I promise I'll come back and pay whatever you ask. Please. This is my last shot." Michael felt something twist inside his chest. This wasn't just a homeless man. This was a human being whose dignity was hanging by a thread. He saw, suddenly and painfully, a mirror of himself. A man trying to hold on to a dying dream. A man down to his last chance. A man who once had a family, a purpose, a name people respected. The stranger's final words cut through him. "I just need to look like a person again, at least for one day." Silence filled the shop. Michael looked at the register, at the $112 he couldn't spare. He looked at the door, at the world that had already rejected this man. He looked at the stranger, at eyes that held both defeat and a faint, trembling hope. And then something shifted. It wasn't logic. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't survival. It was mercy. He exhaled, slow and deep. "Come on," he said quietly. "Sit down. I'll take care of you. No charge." The man blinked rapidly, tears forming instantly, as if no one had said something kind to him in a very long time. Are you sure?" he whispered. Michael nodded. Nobody should walk into their last chance, looking like life has already beaten them. The stranger lowered himself into the chair with reverence, almost as if entering a sacred space. Michael draped the barber cape around him and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. A simple gesture, a holy moment. The test had begun, and without knowing it, Michael had just passed the first part. Michael guided the man toward the back of the shop, where the old porcelain shampoo bowl sat beneath a flickering fluorescent light. He hadn't washed anyone's hair back there in days. Most clients these days wanted a quick in-and-out cut, no ritual, no care, no dignity. But tonight, dignity was exactly what he intended to restore. The man lowered himself slowly, almost trembling, as if he wasn't used to anyone touching him with gentleness. Michael turned on the warm water. Steam rose softly. The moment the stream touched the man's scalp, dirt and city grime ran down the bowl in dark streaks. Michael kept massaging, working through knots and tangles with patient fingers. He used the most expensive shampoo he had, the one his father saved for special occasions. Tonight, this was sacred work. The water ran black, then brown, then finally clear. The man let out a shaky breath, the kind that belongs to someone who hasn't felt human in a very, very long time. When Michael moved him to the barber chair, he draped the fresh cape over him with ceremony. He combed out the long, matted hair inch by inch, refusing to tug or rush. It took nearly an hour before the hair was smooth enough to cut. They talked, at first softly, then openly. The stranger explained he had once worked as a CPA for the same company for nearly 3 decades. A loyal employee, a provider, a family man. But restructuring came. He was laid off. He was in his 50s. Too old, they implied. Jobs dried up. His wife left. Depression hit, bills crushed him. The streets swallowed him. Every detail pierced Michael because they were living parallel tragedies, 2 men on opposite sides of the same cliff. Michael trimmed the sides carefully, sculpting a classic professional cut. Short, clean, respectable. He shaped the top with precision, adding a gentle side part, the way older executives still preferred. Then came the beard. He wrapped the man's face in a steaming towel, a luxury the man almost flinched at, as if it was too kind, too undeserved. When Michael shaved him with the straight razor, he did it slowly, deliberately. No rush, no shortcuts, just respect. He finished with a warm scented aftershave and a light spray of cologne, a bottle from his father he rarely used. Finally, he spun the chair around toward the mirror. The man gasped. Hand trembling, he reached toward his reflection, toward a face he hadn't seen in years. A man reborn. A man restored. Tears fell instantly, running down freshly shaved cheeks. I look like myself again," he whispered. "God bless you, brother. Nobody has treated me like this in a very long time." Michael swallowed the lump in his throat. Tonight, he realized, wasn't about hair. It was about dignity resurrected. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The shop was silent, except for the faint buzz of the old fluorescent light above them and the soft breathing of a man who had just seen a version of himself he thought was gone forever. The stranger wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, then looked at Michael through tears that seemed to hold both gratitude and something deeper, something ancient. "You didn't have to do this," he whispered. "You lost paying customers because of me. You used your best products. You spent almost 2 hours cleaning me up." "Why?" Michael hesitated. He could have said something simple, "It's the right thing to do," or "Everyone deserves help." But the truth came out instead, raw and unfiltered. "Because dignity shouldn't be a luxury," he said softly. "Because you remind me of what I'm afraid of becoming. And because if God is real, He saw you needed help more than I needed the money tonight." The stranger stared at him, and his eyes, those deep, unsettling, impossibly gentle eyes, seemed to sharpen, as if focusing on Michael's soul. He stood slowly. Then, to Michael's surprise, he reached out and took Michael's rough hands in his own, hands warm, strong, comforting, in a way that felt far too steady for a man who'd been shattered by life. His voice changed. It grew firm, resonant, almost authoritative. "God did see," he said. "He saw every gesture of mercy, every moment you chose compassion over fear. Every second you treated me not as a burden, but as a brother." Michael's heart thudded. Something holy shimmered between them, not visible, but undeniably real. The stranger leaned closer, eyes locked onto his. "Listen to me, Michael Reyes." Michael froze. He had never told the man his last name. "Go home," the stranger said, voice low, echoing in the tiny shop. "Rest. Tomorrow, your life changes forever." A chill ran through Michael's body like a sudden wind. Before he could speak, the stranger pulled him into an embrace, firm, reverent, grounding. It felt less like a homeless man's hug and more like something ancient offering comfort to something fragile. Then the man stepped back, smiled with a depth that felt impossible, and walked out into the night. The bell chimed softly. The door closed. Michael stood alone, breath unsteady, heart pounding. He didn't understand it yet, but heaven had just whispered into his barbershop. Michael barely slept. Every time he drifted off, he saw the stranger's eyes, clear, warm, impossibly knowing. He heard again the words that had wrapped around his heart like a prophecy. "Tomorrow, your life changes forever." He didn't believe in visions. He didn't believe in miracles, but he couldn't shake the sense that something invisible had shifted in the air around him. By 5:10 a.m., long before the sun rose over Columbus, he gave up on sleep entirely. The apartment was cold, sparse, still carrying the emptiness left behind when his wife packed up the kids and drove to Cincinnati last year, leaving a note on the kitchen counter that felt like a knife pressed slowly into his ribs. Michael moved quietly through the small space, making coffee with the last scoop he had left. The machine sputtered, gasping like it was as tired as he was. He stood by the window, mug in hand, looking out at the empty street below. A strange stillness hung over everything. Not the stillness of dawn, but the stillness of a moment right before a curtain rises. At 6 sharp, he began the walk to his barbershop, Mike's Chair, a name painted by hand by his father back in 1998. He ran his fingers across the lettering every morning. Today, he lingered longer than usual. Unlocking the door, he stepped into the familiar scent of aftershave, old wood, and something deeper: legacy, loss, and all the dreams that lived between those 4 walls. He swept the floor even though it was clean, adjusted his tools even though they were perfectly aligned, straightened the capes even though no customers would notice. Routine was the only thing keeping him from unraveling, but something was different. He felt it before he saw anything. The shop wasn't just quiet. It was expectant, like the air was holding its breath. At 6:47 a.m., a soft knock echoed on the glass door. Too early for customers. Too early for anyone. Michael's chest tightened. For a split second, absurdly, he wondered if the stranger had returned. He opened the door. A man stood there. Not homeless, not desperate, not broken. A polished figure in a charcoal gray suit, shoes shining, briefcase in hand, posture confident. "Michael Reyes?" the man asked. "Yes," Michael said slowly. The man smiled. "I'm here with a business proposal." And just like that, the prophecy began to unfold. Michael stepped aside instinctively, letting the stranger in, though stranger felt like the wrong word. The man carried himself with the confidence of someone used to making decisions that changed other people's lives. The suit wasn't just expensive. It was tailored. His tie was navy silk, knotted perfectly. Even his shoes looked like they had never once touched dirt. He didn't belong in Mike's chair. Not in a failing barbershop with yellowing wallpaper and chairs older than Michael's marriage. The man looked around with calm, methodical precision, not judging but calculating. Finally, he turned back. "My name is Jonathan Hale," he said, extending a hand. "I own Hale and Harper Grooming Group." Michael blinked. Everyone in Columbus knew that name. They were the fastest-growing men's grooming and barbershop chain in Ohio. Modern, sleek, upscale, the kind of place with espresso machines and playlists curated by marketing teams. I don't understand," Michael said. "What brings you here?" "I didn't apply for anything." Jonathan smiled, not wide, but sincere. "I'm here because someone recommended you." Michael froze. "Recommended me? Who?" "A man you served yesterday," Jonathan said, opening his briefcase. "He called my personal line last night. Told me you gave him, quote, the best service of his life. Told me you treated him with dignity when others wouldn't. Told me you were the finest barber he'd ever encountered." Michael's stomach dropped. The homeless man. The stranger with the knowing eyes. Jonathan continued. "Most recommendations I get are from consultants, influencers, or PR people. I ignore 99% of them. But this caller, his voice, there was something about it. Authority, calm, a kind of certainty you don't hear often. He placed a contract on the counter. I looked into you. You've been cutting hair for 25 years. Clients who stayed with you for decades. Clean record. No debt, except rent arrears. No legal issues. A spotless professional history. And a shop with more heart than most franchises can manufacture." Michael swallowed, stunned. "I want to buy this building," Jonathan said plainly. "I've already contacted the owner." Michael's knees weakened. "And I want you," Jonathan added, "to stay on, as headmaster barber for our new premium line. Salary, benefits, full health care, profit share, and the name Mike's Chair stays. Columbus needs heart. You have heart." Michael stared at the papers, unable to speak. Jonathan leaned in slightly. "All of this," he said gently, "because yesterday you chose compassion over profit." The shop felt suddenly holy, because deep down, Michael knew this wasn't coincidence. This was the beginning of the miracle he had been crying out for. Michael stood there, hands trembling so badly he had to press them against the counter to keep them still. This couldn't be real. Yesterday he was preparing to lose everything. Today a man in a tailored suit was offering him salvation on legal paper. He forced his voice through a dry throat. "Sir, this has to be some kind of mistake. I didn't do anything special yesterday. I just treated a man with humanity," Jonathan finished softly. "Most people don't." Michael felt his chest tighten. Jonathan opened a folder and slid it toward him. "This is a provisional contract. Salary of $72,000 a year. Full medical, paid vacation, retirement contributions. And you stay here as the face and master trainer of the brand." Michael blinked several times. He had never in his life seen numbers like that next to his name. "But why me?" he whispered. "Why my shop? Why now?" Jonathan's expression shifted. Not mystical, but thoughtful, almost reverent. "Because of the man who called me," he said. Michael felt his breath catch. Jonathan continued. "He said you treated him as if he were a king in disguise." His words, not mine. Michael's knees nearly buckled. A king in disguise. Jonathan didn't notice Michael's inner collapse. He kept talking. "He didn't tell me his name. The call came from a private number, brief, direct, and, for some reason, I listened." "What did he sound like?" Michael asked quietly. Jonathan paused, searching for the right phrase. Like someone who had seen a great deal of suffering, but carried none of it in his voice. Gentle, but with a strange authority. Old and young at the same time. Michael's heart pounded. Old and young. Authority. Gentle. It was im. It was im. Jonathan leaned forward. "I tried calling back, but the number didn't exist. My assistant checked. My IT guy checked. No trace." Michael felt goosebumps crawl up his arms. Jonathan continued, unaware of the storm brewing inside him. "I can't explain it, but I'll tell you this. I've made million-dollar decisions with less conviction than I had after hearing that man speak." Silence settled over the room. Not heavy. Holy. Michael finally whispered the question burning in him. "And you really think I deserve this?" Jonathan smiled in a way that almost seemed spiritual. "I think you were chosen for it." The words struck Michael like a bell struck in the deepest part of his soul. Because he knew he had been chosen. Not by Hale and Harper, but by the man who walked into his shop yesterday, the man who wasn't who he appeared to be. Jonathan left around 9:15 a.m. after giving Michael a full hour to breathe, ask questions, and absorb the impossible. When the door finally closed behind him, the bell above it made a soft sound, but it echoed in Michael's mind like a church bell ringing over an empty town. The shop felt different now. Not upgraded, not wealthier, not saved, consecrated. Michael sank into his old barber chair, the one with cracked vinyl and a wobble in the footrest, and tried to steady himself. His entire life had shifted in under 12 hours. The kind of shift that didn't happen without a reason. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe Jonathan was desperate for expansion. Maybe the stranger had connections. Maybe the teaming was a coincidence. Except his heart knew better. He remembered the homeless man's hands gripping his, stronger than a man starving on the street should have been. He remembered the look in his eyes, not just gratitude, but recognition, ancient recognition. He remembered him saying, "Tomorrow, your life changes forever." Not I hope, not maybe, a prophecy. Michael stood abruptly, pacing the shop, trying to shed the rising tide of fear and wonder. He moved toward the barber chair the stranger sat in the night before. His chair, but suddenly not his chair. It felt charged, like static in the air before lightning. And then he saw it. A mark. No, 2 marks, pressed into the vinyl of the chair back, as if palms had been held there with impossible force. Faint depressions, shaped unmistakably like hands. And at the center of each depression, a small puncture. Michael froze. His breath turned shallow. "No," he whispered. "No, that can't." He ran his fingers over the punctures. The vinyl wasn't torn randomly. It was dented in a perfect circle, both sides. As if, he stepped back, trembling, as if the hands had held scars. Circular scars. Scars exactly where nails would have pierced. His throat tightened. His vision blurred. And suddenly, everything he had been denying for 2 days collapsed. The prophecy. The eyes. The voice. The impossible number. The marks. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't luck. This wasn't human charity. A whisper rose inside him. Not a voice. A knowing. I was here. Michael backed away from the chair, covering his mouth as a sob escaped. Because deep down, beneath all the fear, all the logic, all the disbelief, he already knew who had sat in that chair. He just hadn't let himself accept it until now. Michael stood there shaking, staring at the faint hand-shaped impressions as if they might disappear if he blinked. His mind fought the truth, but his soul had already surrendered. The stranger wasn't just a man in need. He was someone who tested hearts, someone who knew his name without being told, someone who spoke prophecy like reading from a page already written, someone whose presence lingered like warmth long after a person left the room. Michael pressed a hand to his chest, trying to steady the pounding beneath his ribs. His vision swam with tears he refused to let fall. Not yet. He backed away slowly, needing to breathe, needing space. But as he crossed the shop, something caught the corner of his eye. A small object rested on the towel shelf. He hadn't seen it there last night. He would have seen it. He was meticulous about his tools. Michael approached it slowly, as if it might vanish if he startled it. It was a comb, but not one he owned. It wasn't plastic, or metal, or part of any set he'd ever used. It was carved from a warm, honey-colored wood, smooth, polished, elegant in a way that felt ancient rather than modern. The handle was engraved. Michael lifted it with trembling fingers. The wood felt alive, warm, as if it had been held by someone only moments ago. He turned it over. Words were carved into the handle in beautiful, flowing script. "Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me." Matthew 25-40. Michael's breath hitched. His knees went weak. He almost dropped the comb, but his fingers tightened instinctively. Beneath the verse was a final line, smaller, softer, carved with unmistakable intimacy. "With love, your brother and Lord." The comb slipped from his hand and clattered against the floor. That was it. There was no more room for denial. No more rationalizations. No more explanations grounded in the safety of disbelief. Michael fell to his knees, not out of fear, but out of overwhelming, reverent awe. He covered his face with both hands as sobs finally broke free. He had served him with his own hands, in his own shop, on an ordinary night in Columbus, Ohio, and the King of Kings left him a gift, a signature, a confirmation, a calling. Michael wept until the floor beneath him shimmered with tears, tears of awe, gratitude, and a humility so deep it shook him to his core. Because he finally understood, Jesus had come to his barbershop, and he had come with purpose. The days that followed felt like living in two worlds at once. On the outside, Michael moved through life as any man who'd just received a miracle job offer might, signing papers, learning new systems, meeting accountants, discussing renovations. His barbershop began transforming. Fresh paint, new chairs, modern lighting, a sleek espresso bar installed where the old radio once sat. But on the inside, something far greater was being renovated. His heart. Michael carried the carved wooden comb everywhere, not out of superstition, but out of reverence. He kept it wrapped in a cleaning cloth inside his apron pocket, fingertips brushing it whenever doubt crept in. Every once in a while, he'd feel a warmth radiate from it. Not heat. Warmth. The kind that feels like reassurance. The kind that feels like, "I'm still here." He told no one except one person, Pastor Elijah, the minister from the church he had stopped attending after his wife left. The pain of sitting among families when his own was broken had been too much. When Michael walked into the church office after months of absence, Pastor Elijah's face softened instantly. "Son, it's good to see you." Michael sat down, hands unable to stay still. "You're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you," he whispered. The pastor listened silently as Michael recounted every moment: the haircut, the prophecy, the marks in the chair, the contract, the comb. And when he finished, Pastor Elijah didn't laugh, didn't doubt, didn't challenge. Instead, he said, Hebrews 13:2, "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so some have entertained angels without knowing it, and sometimes the Lord himself." Michael's eyes burned. "You think it was really him?" The pastor smiled gently. "I think God comes to us in ways we can receive him. You didn't need thunder. You didn't need visions. You needed someone who walked into your shop when you were at your lowest. Someone who showed you heaven still sees you." Michael lowered his head as tears began to fall. At home that night, he knelt beside his bed, something he hadn't done in years. "Lord," he whispered, "I'm not worthy of what you did, but I will spend the rest of my life proving the gratitude I don't have words for." And he meant it. From that day forward, Mike's chair changed, not just physically, spiritually. Every Saturday morning, from 8 to 10, Michael opened his doors to the homeless. Free cuts, free shaves, free dignity. Word spread fast. Some men wept at their transformations. Some prayed with him. Some found jobs afterward. And every time Michael draped a cape over a person society had forgotten, every time he lifted his scissors, he whispered in his heart, "If this were you, how would I serve?" Because from now on, that was his purpose, his calling, his worship. By March, Mike's chair wasn't just a barbershop. It was a refuge. Men who had been overlooked by the world walked in with heads lowered and left standing taller, cleaner, seen. Michael cut hundreds of heads of hair that month, but the ones he never forgot were the men who had nothing. Because every time he trimmed a beard, every time he washed someone's hair with tenderness instead of disgust, he remembered the night he unknowingly washed the hair of the King of Kings. He didn't speak of the miracle. He didn't boast. He didn't even hint. But he lived it, quietly, faithfully. Yet deep in his heart, a question remained. Will I ever see him again? He didn't ask for another encounter. He knew he didn't deserve one. Still, the longing sat inside him like a soft ember. One Thursday morning before opening, Michael checked the mail slot, mostly bills and supply invoices. But one envelope stood out. Ivory paper, no return address, his name written in elegant handwriting that almost glowed in the morning light. He knew that handwriting. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper. He lifted it carefully and read, "Beloved Michael, I knew your heart long before you knew mine. You served me when you had nothing to give. Now give the world what you gave me, dignity, compassion, and hope. Do not look for me on streets or in disguises. I am in every person who sits in your chair. I am in every act of mercy you offer. Where love is given freely, I am found. Continue the work. Continue the love. Well done, my faithful servant, your Lord." Michael pressed the letter to his chest as tears streamed down his face. He sank onto the floor of his shop, his sanctuary, and sobbed into his hands. Not out of fear, not out of shock, out of overwhelming, sacred gratitude. The doubt he had carried evaporated completely. The purpose became crystal clear. He wasn't chosen for wealth. He wasn't chosen for success. He was chosen to restore dignity where the world had stripped it away. And his barbershop was now a temple. The letter ended with one final line, handwritten with unmistakable tenderness. "I am closer than your next breath." Michael closed his eyes. And for the first time in his life, he believed it with every fiber of his being. Spring slowly ripened into summer, and with it came a quiet transformation that reached far beyond the walls of Mike's chair. Word spread, not because Michael advertised, not because newspapers wrote about him, not because social media glorified the story, but because lives were changing. Every Saturday morning, a line formed outside his shop. Men with torn clothes, men with sunken eyes, men whose names the world no longer cared to remember. They waited not just for a haircut, but for something deeper, to be seen, to be treated as human, to feel, even for a moment, that they mattered. And Michael gave them exactly that. With every cut, every shave, every gentle moment of care, he felt the presence of the one who had visited him, steady, quiet, unmistakable. Some mornings, as sunlight spilled through the front window, he felt warmth on his shoulders and knew it wasn't from the sun. He was not working alone. One particular Saturday, an older homeless man looked at Michael with tears shining in tired eyes. "No one's touched my hair kindly in 20 years, he whispered. "Why do you do this?" Michael smiled softly, combing through the man's graying curls. "Because someone once showed me that God still walks into our lives, sometimes, when we least expect him." The man nodded as if he felt the truth vibrating in the air. By July, Jonathan's company had opened 3 more branches, all under Michael's training, all carrying the same philosophy: dignity is a service. Employees were taught to greet each customer, wealthy or homeless, with the same warmth, and at every location the first chair of the row was designated the Grace Chair, reserved every Saturday morning for free cuts. But nothing meant more to Michael than what happened at home. His children returned, not just physically, emotionally. Daniel began apprenticing under Im. Emily visited Im weekly with stories from school. Their laughter filled his apartment again, dissolving the shadows that once clung to his walls. One night, as the 3 of them ate dinner, Daniel set down his fork. "Dad, I want to learn everything you know. Not just how to cut hair. I want to learn how to live like you." Michael's heart swelled. He reached across the table and squeezed his son's hand. "You don't have to be like me," he said softly. "Just be the kind of man who sees God in every person." That's all he ever asked of me. Later that night, when the kids were asleep, Michael knelt beside his bed. On the nightstand sat the wooden comb. Beside it, the letter. He whispered into the stillness, "Lord, thank you for choosing my shop. Thank you for choosing me, even when I was broken." A gentle breeze moved through the open window, brushing his face like a hand. In the silence that followed, he felt a presence, warm, familiar, unmistakably holy, and a whisper settled deep in his soul. "You chose me first." Michael bowed his head, tears falling freely, because he knew it was true. There are moments in life when heaven brushes against the ordinary. Moments so gentle, so unexpected, that only later do we realize God Himself was standing right in front of us. Michael didn't ask for a miracle. He didn't bargain for one. He simply chose kindness when it cost him everything. And that was enough for heaven to move. If this story touched your heart, if it awakened something deep inside you, I invite you to pause for a moment, breathe, reflect. When was the last time you showed mercy to someone who had nothing to offer you in return? And could it be that, in that moment, you were serving someone far greater than you realized? Here on Heaven Walks With Us, we believe that God still walks our streets, still enters our workplaces, still tests our hearts in small, hidden ways. Not through thunder, not through visions, but through people the world overlooks. If you're going through a difficult season, or if you feel unseen, unheard, or forgotten, please know God has not stopped writing your story. Leave your prayer request in the comments. Our community will lift you up. You're not alone. And if these stories of faith and quiet miracles nourish your soul, please like the video to help it reach someone who needs encouragement today. Subscribe to Heaven Walks With Us so you never miss a story of God moving in ordinary lives. Share this video with just one person. You never know whose heart might need hope tonight. May God bless you, keep you, and surprise you with His grace in the most ordinary places.